Hey everyone, this is Kevin Lenahan from Yellow Cottage Tales, and we're about to do a very special interview with a guest that I really wanted to meet. I'm going to be joined in a moment by Dave McGrath, the author of the book Monster, The Life and Crimes of Wayne Chapman, one of the pedophiles monsters that were abducting and killing Massachusetts children, or not just in Massachusetts, in New England, and possibly larger areas than that. This in the 70s. So when I first read Dave's book, the guy that stood out to me as a hero was this detective Al Mintz. And I mentioned to Dave, I said, boy, if we could only interview him. And he's like, Kev, I already did. I went down there and spent a lot of time with him. So, and it turned out he's still alive. He's 87 years old. So we arranged to get him on tonight. So, this is a real kind of special thing for me to be able to be in the same room with this guy. One of the reasons that this guy was a hero to me that stood out, and there are a lot of great cops that are heroes, but this guy stood out to me because he was not pursuing his own ambition within the force. His purpose, his only motivation, or his main motivation, was to get these monsters off the street. And the way you know that is because, these departments can be very competitive with each other. The FBI competes with the state police, but here's a guy who's pursuing this guy, this real bad guy, Wayne Chapman, who was living in Providence at the time, which is how Detective Mintz is connected to him. However, the cases that he's helping try to solve took place in Massachusetts, in Maine, in New York, in Pennsylvania, particularly in Massachusetts with the Andy Puglisi case and the David Lewison case. And Puglisi was in Lawrence and Lewison was in Brockton, but in other cases too. So to me, this is the kind of guy you want in law enforcement that just wants to get the bad guys off the street and wants to help the families out. So let's get to it. Thanks, guys.
We're live. We're waiting for Detective Mintz. Good evening, everyone.
So are we live on YouTube?
Yeah, we're live on YouTube.
Hey, guys, sorry about the delay. We've been having some trouble technically connecting to Al Mintz. He's trying to come on now. Come on, Internet.
All right, Al, can you hear us?
Everybody, this is Dave McGrath, and I'm Kevin Lenahan of Yellow Cottage Tales. Dave is the author of the book Monster, and he works in law enforcement for the Sheriff's Department in Bristol County. We're waiting to get on Al Mintz, who's in Jacksonville, Florida. Al is one of the guys that I was really eager to meet, that I first told Dave about when I first talked to him after reading his book. Al was the lead detective from Providence, Rhode Island, on a number of major cases in the 70s involving disappearing children. And he lives in Jacksonville, Florida now. And we're trying to get him on so he can talk to us about the cases.
There he is. Hey, Al. Can't hear you. You are muted.
Yeah, I can see it's muted.
Al.
Now.
Oh, that's great, Al.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Good evening, my friend. How are you?
Not bad. How are you?
How's the weather in sunny Jacksonville? Good?
We have thunderstorms in the afternoon, but it's hot all day.
Hey, did you ever think that 50 years later, people would be hunting you down to talk about Wayne Chapman?
I talked to a lot of people about Wayne Chapman. I kept up with him until he died.
Yeah. Well, we want to touch base with you, Al. We've been, us and Melanie McLaughlin, who you know well, of course, have been taking a new look at Wayne Chapman. So, there's nobody else besides you to go back and talk to about the cases in Lawrence and Providence, where I sit right now. I'm about 10 minutes away from Linwood Ave, where Wayne Chapman lived. And I wanted to ask, we want to see if we can grab your ear for 45 minutes or so and just talk to you about, I want to see if we can rewind back to the beginning. I mean, how did you first come across the name Wayne Chapman? When did this be brought up to you?
Good place to start, beginning. That's it. Yes. They sent, New York State troopers sent out a teletype to all different departments in New England. And in the teletype, they had some pictures of some little boys laying down by a statue in the woods with their pants down to their knees.
Oh, wow.
And of course, I didn't recognize any of the kids, and it had nothing to do with us. And this was something going on in New York And so I'm looking at the picture, and I saw this dog statue. I said, I know where that's at. That's in Roger Williams Park. So I went, and that was where this picture was taken. So then I went to his neighborhood where he used to live on Linwood Avenue at his house, and a bunch of kids gathered around. And I asked if they seen him, and they know him. They said, "You mean the big fag?" Yeah. So they begin to talk, and they said, "Ask this one," and he's his favorite. And so I got them together, and I found out that he sent out a little paragraph that he wrote about these kids joining his 4-H group. Mm-hmm. It was the most poorly written, misspelled. It looked like a little tiny 4-year-old typed it out, But they let their kids go with this animal, and he molested all of them. I finally got all of them together at the police station, and they began to talk. And so I had enough to go up there and arrest him for that. So I went up there, and we had a lot of missing kids in Rhode Island and in Lawrence and places like that. So I was going to talk to him about the boy in South Kingston and stuff. And I went to his house. It was open. He had emptied everything out. And his garbage were there where everything was gone. And I looked through it. I found some receipts and stuff that placed him at different places. And I kept that. And I also found a little piece of an award where he got an award when he was younger for perfect attendance in church. I kept that.
Yeah. And
so when I went, I found out enough about him, and I had pictures of these boys that I didn't really need to, interrogate him, except all these other departments would want me, if he would talk, he wouldn't talk to them. If you can get him to talk, ask him this and this. They gave me a list of questions. And so I went in, and he's sitting there, and he looked like, this guy's like, you look at his eyes, like looking into a pit, it's dark. Yeah. And he's sitting there, and he don't know who I am. I introduced myself, and I said, I don't need to talk to you. See these boys here? I said, they've all gave me statements about your escapades with them. And I said, I'm just going to take you back, and they will put you in prison. And when they find out in prison that you molested this little Italian boy here, they're going to kill you, And he really shook him up. I said, I don't need any. I've got their statements. That's all I need. So he's sitting there, and he's like shaking. You can see the color leave his face. So I said, he says, well, if I go to prison, I'll surely be killed. I said, yeah, but I don't think that's where you belong. I don't think you belong in prison. I think you need help. And I tested the water, and he says, well, I do need help. I said, okay, we'll talk. But let me tell you something. You tell me one lie, and it's all over. It's all over, Mm-hmm. There was no promise made. I don't know what he's thinking about all over. There was no promise made. I would do anything. So I began talking. He talked about when the first time he got in trouble, he took a kid and tied him to a tree and set him on fire. And he went to prison for that. And when he got out, he's telling me that the warden said, you need to get a normal life and get married and live a normal life. So he got hooked up with this girl in a church, and they married, and she had a bunch of kids. Well, he said he molested her kids too. The marriage didn't last that long.
Yeah.
So then we talked about Lawrence, the little boy missing up there, Andy. And he got pretty shook up when we started. I showed him the picture, and he looked at it. He said, well, he looks familiar. And so I said, remember what I said, one lie and it's all over. You understand? Okay, I'm trying to come up with it. I don't know what that meant, but anyway. He says he took the kid, he looked like him, walked him into the woods, and he says, and he had something medically wrong with him. And so he said, I came out. I said, well, let me ask you this. Was he alive? Was he breathing? And he really got shook up, Sure. And I said, listen, was he dead? He said, I killed the kid. Okay. So that was the first time. And we were talking about Andy Puglisi, you know.
Yeah.
And so he flat said, I killed that kid, okay? But he wouldn't talk about the body, you know, any other bodies or anything where he might have stashed somebody. But anyway, he began to tell me his entire life story. He was about 11 years old. Some girls molested him in a tent. And, you know, they have a way of trying to make themselves a victim when they're trying to talk their way out of a situation like this, you know.
Sure.
So, and he said that he was, had been messing with a young kid for a long time. He said he even molested his brother, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his thing was he would travel out to the woods. I have a tape of him talking to himself.
Yeah.
And he's it's a bus ride, you know, he's following a school bus. And he talks about things he's done, things he'd like to do, and how he like to get into the kids on them buses. And he rambles on and on and on. And he says, I've had to do this, I've had to do that, I've had to do this. And he goes, I even had one of them. And he paused and he just couldn't say anything. It was like he was hung up, you know?
Right.
And so I asked him at that time, that tape, I said, and that's his tape that I found in a box that marked country music. And
wow, that's an interesting detail. Okay.
Yeah, so he said, I said, well, you stop. You said you have one of them what? Did the kid, you talking about the one who died? And he started kind of breathing heavy. I said, you talking about the one that died? I guess, yeah, I am, you know. So that was, you know, that was sort of the thing. And then I interrogated him on all kinds of different stuff. I had my group of boys, and then he's talked about little boy Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on and on. He mainly he talked about Jamestown, New York.
Sure.
He'd wait for the warm weather when the trees were full of leaves and stuff. You know what I mean? And he would go out looking for a boy. His favorite ploy was he'd find maybe two or three kids together. He'd say, "Listen, my little girl's dog is lost, and I'm afraid he's going to get hurt. Can y'all help me find him? It's a little puppy. He's a little white, fluffy puppy." And he said, "If you go that way, you go this way, you come with me." He doesn't pick his victim out, see? He would call him that way. And that's what he would do. I mean, then I would ask him about different things. He told me everything, things he's done to kids, what he's had them do to him, what he's had them do to each other. But he told me everything. It wasn't like he held back, and he liked talking to me.
Yeah.
I guess he was still a little under the illusion that I was going to put him in a state hospital. But then I had Dr. Glamenko, a Russian doctor who was working in the state of Rhode Island. Had him I brought him to the state hospital, and they shot him up with sodium amytal, interviewed him under sodium amytal.
Yeah.
It didn't work well. It was like he was wanting more, you know. When they would give him the injection, I don't really feel anything yet. So anyway, that didn't work out too well. He talked basically about the same things. But even the Russian doctor asked him questions, and he was not that responsive.
Al, when you first went up, go ahead.
Go ahead.
When you first went up to that house, 129 Linwood Ave, did Chapman have anything in there, a dark room or anything where he developed pictures or camera equipment, anything like that you remember?
No, he didn't have nothing like that. He wasn't that sophisticated. He used a Polaroid.
Okay. And you mentioned one other thing I wanted to grab your ear about is you mentioned the murder, the young boy there in South Kingstown, just down the road here, south of me, Jason Foreman.
Right.
Some information came to me this week that about the murder, and it's just so funny that you bring it up because it's something I needed to chase down about the killer, a guy named Michael Woodmansee, who ended up going down for his murder. He's out now, still living in Rhode Island. Was there any inkling to you that maybe those two were connected, knew each other potentially?
No, there wasn't. I talked to him pretty extensively about that South County boy. And he didn't know anything about it. But I did have some receipts where he had bought gas down in that area.
Sure.
And I asked him about that, and he was just on one of his tours at that time.
Sure.
He said nothing significant happened.
Do you know did he ever tell you about when he arrived in Providence? Do you know what year? Was it 74, 75?
Somewhere around the early 70s, there's 74 maybe.
Yeah.
He was living with some woman from some church there in Providence.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I never heard that.
I never knew what happened there. I know he was living with this woman from some church thing that he got involved in.
Interesting. I wonder what church it was. I'll have to try and chase that down. That's interesting.
I remember when I was sitting there talking to him, I said, how'd you get perfect attendance in church? And like shocked, like I either shot him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, see him thinking, how does he know that, you know? And I was different things I saw in his mail and his junk, you know. And when I'd say something about it, he was like, how in the world does he know that? You know, he was like, he was just total shock. But see, the difference was these other departments that went there from these different cities before I talked to him, and even the state police Rhode Island had talked to Chapman, but he wouldn't talk to them. And so, but when I got there, what the difference was, these other detectives would come in and ask him specifically about a specific boy and a specific incident. He just hammered him right off the bat with that, and he clammed up, wouldn't say nothing. And I talked to all of them, and they all had a shot at him. He just wouldn't talk to him. So the difference is, I went in and laid those pictures down. I said, listen, you're going to prison, and they'll kill you in prison, you know?
Sure.
So anyway, I said, that's when I made a deal. I said, I don't think you belong to. I think you need help. You know, and he went for that pretty hard. So he thought, then one time, even on tape, he said to me, you're not at all like the other psychologists I've talked to. I don't know where we're going. I never introduced myself as a psychologist.
Sure.
But I did dig into his brain like one, though. I really got into his head.
Do you think, did the FBI ever look at him at any time when you were investigating him? Anybody ever come down?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Were you sort of a one-man gang going after him?
Well, yeah, Kelly, yeah. Also, there was a unsolved homicide in Boardman, Ohio, and he had talked about Boardman. He was trying to pronounce where he was at, and then I contacted them, and when they came there, they were like, they didn't even hardly try to talk to him at all, you know.
You know, it's funny how you bring that up. I don't know how much you keep up with the news. They actually announced who the killer was last week. DNA evidence, and it's some random trucker who ended up dying in California.
So this in Boardman, Ohio?
Yeah, it was the two murders. The boy Brad Bellino and the Evans boy. After last time we talked, you had mentioned that to me, and I actually went to Boardman. I went out to Ohio and looked through their files. They questioned Chapman a lot on that case. I had interview notes from the detectives.
They came to Providence, you know, but they weren't really with him that long. And I didn't know I just know he mentioned that town, you know. And then years later, when I was at my daughter's in upstate New York, I cut across, I found myself driving through Jamestown. I said, oh God, this is where Chapman was at. You know, this is years later.
Yeah.
And I'm going down the road, and all of a sudden I see the exit sign for Boardman, Ohio, right past. Yep. And I'm going, holy cow. I'm reliving all the shit he said, all the street names and stuff as I'm going through Jamestown. I'm reliving the whole thing. It's like I'm right there where he talked about.
I did the exact same thing. I went up to visit his childhood home, and like you, I saw the signs, and I knew you had mentioned to me that he had been connected to Boardman, so I drove through in a blinding snowstorm, and eerie to be up there for sure.
How far away is Boardman from Jamestown?
Not that far, 20, 30 minutes, you know. It's not that far.
So he could have been talking about Boardman when he was a teenager, say, going up there.
Well, I mean, it was nearby. It was like, just up the road a ways. It's when you start going south,
Right.
First thing you see is a Boardman exit, so it's not that far.
When was the first murder in Boardman? Do you know, Dave? Or?
No,
Yeah.
this I want number two that they pretty much think they have solved, and that's the only ones I'm aware of.
I just want to say, Al, too, when I first spoke with Dave, it was after having read his book, and he'll probably remember this, but I told him, I said, the only one person that I would like to meet was Al Mintz. I said, that's the only guy that came across to me as a real hero in the book because of the way you were chasing this down outside, not only outside of Providence, but across state lines. And so it's clear that the only thing you cared about was not self-promotion, but was to bring justice to these people. And I said that to him, and he goes, well, you know what? I actually know Al. I've talked to him. I said, oh, really? That's fantastic.
Good.
Al, just real quick, going back to Boardman, I guess they got this guy. The DNA is a lock solid thing. He lived in Boardman, but there's a lot of weird stuff in Boardman. I mean, there was a sex ring there we're working on. I mean, I'm not saying Chapman wasn't. I'm still not ready to say. I'm like you. If I see a case where a boy went missing and Wayne Chapman had even stopped through there, I think he's connected to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well,
he started telling.
Go ahead.
So now, a big question that we have is whether there are accomplices on any of these cases. This is back to the whole theory of Dave's book, and I think maybe this is part of your theory. When we look back to these disappearances in New England and Massachusetts in the 70s, were they connected to each other? And the big question was, were any of these predators working together? So that would also, in Boardman, they had the DNA from the underwear that was matched to this one guy, but that doesn't mean there weren't accomplices involved because no details are known about the murder.
Well, I don't think at that time when I was dealing with Chapman, I don't think he was part of any group. He was a loner. I mean, he was definitely out there by himself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying later on that he didn't get hooked up with him because he was in that institution where they was full of those kind of people.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't really know, but I'm aware of all that what's going on in New England, in Boston and Providence and all over Massachusetts. But Barney Frank, that's all I can think of with his man-boy love association connection. You know what I mean? Yep. That's to me is the sickest thing in the world. This guy was a damn congressman. You know what I mean?
And many years, many terms. Yes.
Yeah, but that to me that just kind of says it all. And you have a lot of stuff going on in that area, but look at the people representing that area. Look what they've got there. You know, and evidently they just don't see anything wrong with that. But the facts are really that those kind of people do mess with kids, and that's the long and short of it. And Chapman was just that was literally his whole life. Yeah. He didn't fish, he didn't hunt, he didn't go to ball games. The only time he went camping is when he hoodooed some kids into getting them into the woods.
Yeah,
his whole thing when he was off was pursuing kids. You know, all he did was just drive around looking for kids. And sometimes he'd get him, talk to a bunch of them. Sometimes he'd score, sometimes he wouldn't. But that's all he did. Every day that he was off, that's what he did.
When his van was pulled over in New York, it was filled with it had reels of child porn and pictures of boys. Were those things that he generated himself or that he obtained from somebody else?
He obtained from somebody else, but what I remember most of his Polaroid pictures that they found in his truck.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of crap in there. Now I did get those tapes that he had, and I was listening to them at night, and I ran across the one where he's following a school bus, and he kind of says it all in that tape. But he didn't see anything wrong with what he was doing.
Right.
I mean, he really thought that they wanted him to do what he was doing to them.
So where do you think he bought those other ones that he had that he didn't generate himself? Do you think that he bought them or he traded for them or?
No, there's really no telling where he came up with that stuff.
Yeah,
there's no telling. You know, I know they had a lot of Polaroid pictures of boys. You know,
yeah,
but he was absolutely the worst because he didn't think he was doing anything wrong, you know.
Do you think that's the way it was back then, Al? Was there just a lot of people, because the child porn laws didn't exist, it basically fell under the umbrella of obscenity? Do you think there was a lot of that shit going on in Providence when you were a cop there?
Yeah, matter of fact, when the Supreme Court said that child pornography would be illegal if you took it to a judge and he would had no social redeeming value, they could close the place down and make them take the stuff off the shelf. So I was about a block from the police station. There was a dirty bookstore, and they had little booths that show dirty movies. Well, I went in, and there's a rack of just little kids, little boys, little girls, little boys and boys. I mean, really raw pornography. So I took the book and I said to the guy, "You don't mind if I take these and have a judge look at them, do you?" You know. He says, "No, I guess," you know. So I had a short walk from that counter. I parked right outside the door at the curb. Before I could open the door of the car, my radio is blaring. They want me to see the major, see Major Layden, see Major Layden. I'm going, what in the world's going on? You know. So anyway, I went to see him. He was livid. "You give me one goddamn reason why you seize those books." You know, I said, "Well, you want one reason? They're illegal."
Right.
Oh, bullshit. Now I'm thinking to myself, how did he find out so fast?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
You know what I mean? And so anyway, he's really going off. And finally he's cussing me so much. I said, "Look, you just demoted yourself down to a lizard." I said, you cussing me. I'll tell you what, I will stomp your ass, you know?
Yeah.
And he's, "I'll fire you. You can't fire me." So I went up to the chief's office with my books and I walked in and laid him on his desk. He said, "What is this shit?" So here comes that major behind me. He said, "I want him fired. I want," you know, he is just, I don't know what his connection with that dirty bookstore was, but definitely was a connection there, you know?
Interesting. It's almost like somebody should find out. Yeah. Keep going now. Yeah.
But anyway, the chief, I said, "You call Ronnie Urso. He'll tell you what I'm telling you is correct." So Ronnie Urso, he was the intelligence head of the intelligence.
The head of the intel unit back in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, "Yeah," he says, "Mintz is right. You take him to a judge, and if he says they have no social redeeming value, you close the place down." Yeah. So the chief said, go ahead, Al," you know, and the chief chewed this guy's ass out. He said, "You know, you better get hands off of him," you know. So anyway, but I to the day I die, I'm trying to figure out, how did this guy know to contact Major Layden so fast? I mean, before I could walk 8 feet to the car, you know, he's on the radio screaming for me. And I don't know what made him so mad. He had to have a connection with that people that ran that or owned it somehow.
If you will indulge me for a minute, Providence Police Headquarters right over on Washington Street in Providence. And for the listeners who don't know, to this day, literally a block around the corner is an amazing adult video store in the same spot where that dirty bookstore was. And same thing still goes on. Dirty books, video booths, the whole 9 yards. So nothing has changed now, you know?
Well, Mercy Yancey and Chief Ritchie, Angelo Ritchie, they did a walk. They went in there and they closed that thing down for a while. But I don't know what happened after that. Of course.
Do you remember the name of it, Al? Probably don't, but shot in the dark.
No, I just had a thing up there, X-rated and all this kind of stuff. But it was a real sicko shop. But it was less than a block from the police station.
Yeah,
I mean, you walk out the front door and go to the corner, you can see the place, you know.
Yeah. And these kind of shops were all run by the mafia, right?
I would guess so. You know, it seemed like that guy had a direct connection to Layden.
Interesting. Real quick, Al, if we can just spin the dial back a little bit. Another. What do you remember, or what do you know about the case with Wayne Chapman and the boy in Brockton, David Lewison?
I went over that pretty heavy with him, and he definitely says it wasn't him. You know, he didn't. That didn't even ring a bell with him. He was looking at. He was acknowledging different kids, but when I showed him that kid, he didn't. He didn't acknowledge him. He said looks like a kid he would like to find, but that wasn't. He doesn't know him. You know.
So you don't think Chapman was involved?
No, no. The one in Brockton, you mean?
Yeah, Brockton. Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think so. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think so. I remember talking to Captain Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
And he was really a lot of help when I was interrogating. He was feeding me a lot of information, questions to ask him and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he stayed on top of that pretty good, and he taught me about this other thing, and I just didn't know, you know.
Yeah. Is it still your? Go ahead.
Oh, you're right. Go ahead.
Is it still your contention to this day that Wayne Chapman killed Puglisi from Lawrence?
Yeah, I absolutely.
Any idea what happened to the socks? The mysterious.
No, but you know they were in that van, and Puglisi's mother identified them. You know, and I don't know what happened to them after that, but they never. I don't know if Lawrence got those socks, or I just don't remember.
And there were two socks, right? Because I've heard different theories on that. Yeah. That there was one sock or two socks.
No, there was two socks. They were girl socks.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's how the mother remembered them so well. She said he was wearing his sister's socks to the pool.
Right.
Yeah. And they thought it was kind of funny because he had these great big high socks on.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway,
what do you think? To this day, obviously, we haven't. No body is turned up, and it's been my theory all along that Chapman was at Miriam Hospital, and could have easily transported that body into the morgue and
he incinerated. I think he incinerated because I think in somewhere I heard that there was that day or the day after that boy was missing, that there was an unauthorized burn in that incinerator.
Yep.
As part of his job was incinerating your lab animals.
Yep.
So it was like a small crematorium thing.
Al, just on this same topic of the incinerating, going back to the kid that was tied to the tree that he tried to light on fire. Why did he try to light him on fire? Because that seems a little different than what I've heard from his usual motive.
Well, I think he didn't think nothing about killing the kid back then, but that particular kid he was next door. He could see him with different toys and swings and stuff that he didn't have. And he said he was extremely jealous and the kid had everything and he had nothing. So,
this was Wayne was the kid then that he did that.
Yeah.
That was okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think Wayne was like 16 years old.
All right.
Yeah. But he went to jail for that.
Yeah.
He went to prison for that. But he didn't think nothing about setting the kid on fire. I don't think he think anything about. But see, the reason he didn't kill all these kids, is because he thought that they wanted him to do those things to him, and the one that did die seemed like it was a medical problem. It wasn't necessarily directly because of the assault.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, we may never know.
Melanie seems to think that there were accomplices with him in Lawrence. Do you agree with that?
Well, I've heard that before, and I just don't see it happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He liked to be alone too much.
Have you? I mean, I guess the evidence for that would be first the year before when he raped the two boys in the same area, taking them from the pool in Lawrence. The boys apparently said they heard clicking in the woods and rustling in the bushes. They didn't see someone else, but their impression was that someone else was there. And then,
I've heard that.
In a ray. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. But you don't drink that much water. Okay.
Well, I mean, you knew him better than anybody.
Yeah.
Al, with the climate, I mean, in Providence at the time, I know you had mentioned, me and you had talked before, and you had talked about how you had to arrest, I can't remember, it was a city councilman or somebody in a political position for obscenity, right?
He's a president of city council.
President of the city council.
Yeah. And he used to get away with, I mean, I've seen bosses come let him go. He'd be sitting behind the wheel drunk, couldn't even sit up, catch him with boys in the car. They would always let him go, you know. But when this boy came to me and told me about this guy trying to get him to go into a dirty movie, I went there and lo and behold, it's this president of city council. So the boy, I said, don't approach him, let him approach you. But he gets in the damn car with him. Now I got to follow the car all over the place.
Yeah.
So during that ride, or when he came back to where he was supposed to go, he reached over and tried to grab the boy by the crotch. And so, but you would have thought I would have assassinated Kennedy. When I brought this in, listen, these bosses, because you got to remember, he's part of the machine that made them what they were, you know, and they came to get. They were there in the. I mean, the chief was there, the Major Lade was there, and he says, "This is entrapment. This is Major Lade." And I said, "Can you spell that?" I says, "That's not entrapment. I didn't tell him to bother that kid. If I would have told him to do it and then arrest him, that would be entrapment. I didn't talk to him at all." You know, so they were like crazy. So he gets the mayor on the phone, and the mayor said, "Well, let me ask you this, Chief. What would you do?" He said, "I'd place him before the grand jury." He said, "Well, then that's exactly what you do."
Yeah.
And that being it. Well, the grand jury, I go there, and they chat in his power. The guy that normally handles the grand jury is sitting in the back. They got this young black graduate just became a lawyer. He's running the grand jury. So while I'm trying to testify before the grand jury, this guy in the back keeps interrupting me. I said, they're trying to screw the grand jury over, right? Wow. So I told him, I just called him down. I said, "Listen, is he running this show or you running the show? Because you interrupt me one more time, we've got a problem." You know, and boy, his face turned red. He sat back. He didn't say another word. Yeah. Now, this is the truth. When I finished testifying, he pissed me off. So when I done, I said, "Listen, if y'all like this kind of stuff, you want these people messing with your children," I said, "then no true bill him." I said, "But if you don't want this to happen, then you true bill him." I said, "Because if y'all this is what you want, I'll go back to Florida where it's still against the law," you know? And that's how I ended my grand jury testimony. They all stood up and gave me a standing ovation.
Wow.
When I'm leaving the grand, 30 people stand up and give me a standing ovation. Well, the guy that ran the grand, he said, "I've been here 30 years. He said, I've never seen nothing like that. Never." You know, but they had me mad, so I figured I'd unload on them, you know.
No, that's
well,
he
did get indicted. And he did get indicted. And then when he went to trial, he didn't have a jury, he just had judge. I don't know, I guess he thought the judge would let him go. But the judge actually admonished him and told him he's lucky he didn't charge him with perjury, because he said he lied on the witness stand. But he found him guilty. But when I went back to work now, everybody goes, "Oh, I knew you would do it. Get away from me." You know what I mean? Come on. Everybody I was like I was poisoned. Nobody wanted to be near me. But then he got convicted, and then all of a sudden, oh man, I can't. But I couldn't believe how much crap that cost me. It could cost me a lot. But the Catholic Church came out with 2 full pages in the newspaper praising this guy. What a credit he was to the community. He was good with the kids. You know, the ball club. Yeah, I guess he was. There's some victims out there, you know. But the Catholic Church, I mean, everybody was upset, you know. But it came together, and he got convicted. So I feel like I did my job.
And the major that we're talking about, in case people want to know, is a guy named, I'm just looking at my notes, Major John Layden.
Yeah, he's dead now.
He's dead now. He left Providence Police as a major in 1984, and he was actually the chief of police in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, until his retirement. I'll have to look into that more. I'm interested in the story about the smut shop anyway.
Well, I don't know.
Providence was that corrupt at that time?
Well, I was on the first people with it. Yeah, that was before. It was before Cianci. It was really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody knew somebody. Everybody had somebody to call, you know.
Right.
And the politics then was just, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I was sent and walked a foot post in the middle of the winter, all winter long, because I was going to arrest. Again, it was the president of city council at the time. He was an undertaker, and I was going to take him to the police station. Well, the next day, I found out you don't mess with him. I wound up on 6 foot, which is what's it called, a string post. You got to walk between call boxes. It takes you about a half hour to get from one to the other. Then you got to ring in every half hour. So that means you're going to walk the whole 8 hours up and down in the deep snow.
Oh, Jesus.
But
I could only imagine, you know, all these guys are local guys. Here you come from Providence. You're a Navy guy. You decide to settle there for a little bit. It must have been tough for you as an outsider anyway, you know?
yeah, well, they didn't get me at all. I mean, but they would come. Everybody would come to me for different things, you know, and
Yeah.
especially when it comes to involve children or sexual assaults.
Yeah.
But
Did you see that becoming more prevalent? Is there a lot of sexual abuse against children in Providence in your day there?
yeah, there was. I had several cases. But you know, I'm proud of this fact that 100% every one of them I had were charged and convicted.
Sure.
You know, so I mean, I had some very strange cases.
Yeah.
But I mean, but little kids, you know, little girl was like 4 years old, and a guy exposed himself to her at a Christmas party.
Mm-hmm.
And the little girl, I'm talking to the little girl, and I says, and then what happened? He said, then he said, he showed me his butt, you know.
Yeah.
He goes, then he turned around and made a flower grow. That was her statement.
Wow.
So I knew what she meant, but everybody else, he made a flower grow. What do you mean a flower grow? Yeah. Come on, you know. So that guy, I arrested him. He confessed, but she was just a little tiny girl. She didn't know what was going on. She was like 4 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
This guy, it was a Christmas party. He worked there as a janitor or something. He lured her off to the Coke machines, which was another floor.
Sure. Do you ever look back and go, you know, maybe how in the world did this Chapman thing fall into my lap that's still, you know, 50 years later, still drawing so much public interest, you know?
Well, basically that I scooped that. It was just that I happened to recognize the place where the little boys were at.
Yeah. And
then I took it from there. So the more I looked at because there was so many kids right there that was willing to talk about what he'd been doing.
Right.
And anyway, that's when I went to where he cleaned his apartment. I found his trash and found some stuff in there that was helpful because it blew his mind, you know.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I just think that you know, life is strange like that. And real quick, Al, I mean, why did you end up leaving it? Did you just get sick of the bullshit and the politics in Providence? And
you nailed it. That's it.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, it was at a point where things had turned bad for Mayor Cianci.
Yeah.
He was making a lot of bad choices.
Yeah.
I could see all of it falling apart, you know, and I knew that the Democrat got back in there, my ass would be grass.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I hated the politics part of it, but and I was done with it. And then like bosses that were doing things like when Layden gets all pissed off because I seize those books.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how could he be pissed off? Look at what's in these books, you know?
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
He was Mr. Goody Two Shoes.
Yeah.
But he wasn't that bright.
And you think that is your theory in line with mine? Do you think that Chapman ended up getting that body over to Providence to Miriam Hospital?
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you feel like when you talked to Chapman about the Puglisi case that he was there, that he was able to, you know, that you got the sense from him that he was the guy?
Oh yeah. I mean, he after I got into it with him there, he pretty much relived the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
Except he won't talk about what he did with the boy's body, you know.
Wow.
And he was probably left him tied to a tree, but that was the thing he did, I guess, on a regular basis. I don't know.
Do you think there's more out there?
Yeah, there's, like I said, I was going to say, really no telling how many kids he's encountered,
right,
or had actually have died or he killed. But I know one thing: it was more than one thing where he talked about a kid dying. You know,
yeah, sure.
But he knew he had it though. And when finally, after all my hours and hours of interrogation, said to me, he told me, "You're trying to put me in jail." And I said, "Oh, good guess." You know,
yeah, great guess.
Whatever made you think that?
Yeah, right. I encountered Chapman just before his death. I told myself I'm going to go down there. He's just getting released from prison and going to the homeless shelter, and you're not kidding. He's one of those guys when you're up close and next to him, it's just, you know, the hair on your neck stands up. He is just a pure evil, you know.
Yeah, creepy guy.
You got anything, Kevin?
Yeah, Al. I'm thinking about Chapman's, you know, what he might do with the body. If he left the body there, it seems like there was a pretty good chance it would have been found since they brought out so many people. So if he panicked and took it with him, is it possible the way he used the route, use the highway system, that he would just dump it in the woods somewhere on a highway stop up? You know, for instance, maybe you can remember, Dave, there was another case where a kid was taken from a Massachusetts town and the body was found up on the highway stop in New Hampshire, I think, or Vermont. Yeah. It's a sensible thing to me is if you're you don't want to get caught with it, so you're going to get rid of it. So you drive an hour away and just throw it somewhere in the woods, and it's unlikely to be found.
Well, you know, then you got to consider he's not thinking, he's in a panic. So
right.
I mean, yes, you don't want nobody to find that boy's body. So I'm thinking he's had plenty of time to consider going and burning it. You know,
right, sure.
So, and the fact that there was an unauthorized burn at that same time.
Yeah.
So, and not everybody had access to that incinerator.
Right. It actually takes a special key that you have to turn on and off that only certain people got, and spent more time than you can imagine at Miriam Hospital. Did you ever go up there, Al, and talk to people there? Talk to his boss? Talk to anyone?
No, not really. I understood what he did, and I gathered from him that he would not that sociable. Anyway, he couldn't relate to an adult. The only thing he could relate to is kids.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, low IQ, and those victims that you spoke to. How many victims do you think Chapman had in that Rhode Island area? Yeah, I know he said 100. I mean, God, it's just endless the amount of people. You know?
Yeah, well, you got to remember he did this every day, and he didn't always stay in Rhode Island. He would drive up to New York, and drive some distance. And that's why I question about South County so much.
Yeah,
Jason Foreman.
Yeah.
But he would travel. That was his whole mind, to go to a wooded area where kids would be or nearby playing or whatever, and then find his victim. He knew he was going to grab it before he did it.
Right.
You know?
Alan, I got in Melanie's documentary, she shows how Andy brought home a couple of days before, a Polaroid that a stranger had met him on the street and taken and given to him. And he took it and that's probably the last photo of him. And his mom has that. Do you think it was Wayne Chapman that took that photo? In other words, he was down there targeting these kids, days before.
It could have been, because he did use that Polaroid camera a lot. It could have been.
So do you think Andy was specifically targeted at that point? He had scouted him out, and he was
probably so. I don't really know, but it seemed like he was telling me that he followed a kid into the bathroom at the pool.
Yeah.
And that's where he lured him to the woods. But see, he described going to that woods. He said it was like a city yard where a bunch of asphalt was dumped.
Yeah.
Now, he wouldn't have known that unless he had been there, Because when we went back and checked, exactly as he described, and there was the city yard, like a city yard that dumped some asphalt. And he wouldn't have known that unless he'd been there.
But he had been there the year before because he was convicted of raping the 2 other boys, right? So
did he bring him to that same place? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. That was afterwards.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's one of those things, Al. It's one of those cases where the more stuff you uncover, it's almost like the more questions you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was, just put it mildly, he was deeply mentally imbalanced. I mean, his train of thought was totally different than anybody's. I mean, he was just he was if you looked up Predator, his picture should be next to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But he went after the very weak, the kids that were by themselves or whatever, but at an age where he could convince them and manipulate them, because he wasn't that bright, but he was bright enough to lure these kids. He had a little scheme of his own,
Yeah.
I know they tried to release him several times, and several times I got involved. I wrote one judge a letter and told him, if you let him out and he grabs another kid and kills another kid, it's going to be on you,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which he undoubtedly would have done. He would have done it, no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But there was some lawyer that kept trying to get him out, saying that he was not a danger anymore,
Yeah.
But whenever they were going to release him, he was supposed to be released like that coming Monday. Well, on that Friday, they charged him with a lewd act in the jail because he was standing at the door with a female guard masturbating in front of him. Well, they charged him with a lewd and lascivious act, but they still let him out.
And they still let him out.
Yeah, and see that thing before this day, he went to court and he's all slumped over in a wheelchair. But when he's back in his jail cell, he's standing there whacking it in front of a female guard, So he was a phony. He liked to play on people's sympathy, But when he went to those court hearings in a wheelchair, there wasn't nothing wrong with him. He could walk.
Didn't he continue to call you in prison, Al? I remember you saying that.
Yeah, he did. He called me from prison. He said, well, he felt like he was getting somewhere with me, but his lawyers don't want him talking to me, and I guess he was wondering what was happening with my case,
Mm-hmm.
But I said, well, it's up to you. You can, you told me that, you don't want to talk to me. So, but it's up to you. I'll talk to you if you want to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
truly
but he never called. He was a weird, he was just kind of just really weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I mean, he got hit by a bus, it would have pleased me. That's how I felt about it. He was just, he was horrible. He was horrible.
Well, Al, I got no more questions. Kevin, you got anything else?
just one more, Al, because you spent so much time with this guy that you may be one of the only people that has these kind of insights. Is there something about these guys that once they're a little bit comfortable with you and they're trusting you, that they kind of just want to talk about what they've done? Maybe whether it's they're kind of reliving it in their own mind or.
I'm sure that's the case, but with him, he talked about anything. So he was enjoying talking about it, and all kinds of subject matters about his life, and he enjoyed talking about it, but he liked making himself the victim, just like all of them do. They want to become the victim, something happened to them that caused it to be like that or whatever. But anyway, that's what it's like. But like I say, he wasn't that bright. He wasn't that good at fooling anybody. So
right.
But see, I had him in a box because I said to you, I've got these 8 boys that are going to tell the story in Jordan. You're going to go to jail a long time, and I don't need to hear from you. I've already heard from them. Right. And then when he realized that he was going to go to prison, and I said, well, I don't think that's where you belong. I think you need help. That was it. I knew that he would fall for that, and he went for it. Sure. I said, but he that's why, and I told him, don't lie to me one time. If you do, it's all over. You're going to prison. Sure. And that's why he was willing. That's one reason he was willing to talk so much.
Sure. Well, Al, you got it out of him? And
I'll
hopefully someday we can put an end to this thing once and for all. At least anyway, you know.
Well, at least he's not around anymore, so that's a good thing.
Hopefully there's some more justice on the other side. That's all I can say. I appreciate you giving me an hour of your time, Al. Appreciate all the time you gave me in the lead up to the book. I appreciate you always answering my calls. I appreciate your service, man, and I hope sunny Florida is good to you. I hope you wish you well.
Listen, when do I get a copy of the book?
You haven't gotten a copy of it yet?
No.
You haven't gotten a copy of it yet? Holy shit. I didn't know that. Shit, man. I didn't know that. I apologize. Right after we get off this, I'll shoot you a text message. Send me your address one more time. I'll get it right out to you tomorrow morning.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Thanks so much for joining me, Al. I'll talk to you down the line, brother. But definitely text me your address as soon as we get off this call.
Okay. It was an honor to meet you, Al. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See you, Al.